In this video, we're going to look at the Viewer Toolbar, a new feature inside of Motionbuilder 6 located here on the right side of the viewer window that allows you fast access to your transformation tools as well as several transformation and selection options. So for starters, at the very top of this toolbar, we have the selection mode. Let me go ahead and bring in an object that we can transform a bit to make this a little bit easier. I'll bring in a sphere that I imported from Maya, and just using the hotkeys for now, I'll scale this up and lift it up here into the scene so that we can see it nice and clearly. So again, at the top we have the selection mode. This is going to allow us to control the manner in which we transform objects based on the current tool we have selected. Right now I have the move tool, and so I have the ability to go to standard selection mode, which is the default setting, where I can simply use the manipulator to transform the object, move it around my scene. Next I have drag mode, where I don't necessarily have to have my mouse over the manipulator itself. I can drag anywhere in my scene, and I'm automatically moving the object in all three axes. I have the XYZ mode, in which I can use the different mouse buttons to specify an axis upon which to move the object. So my left mouse button is going to move us in X, my middle mouse will move us in Y, and right mouse will move us in Z, like so. And down from here we have parent mode, which allows me to drag an object from a child onto a parent. Let me go ahead and create another sphere. So I'll just duplicate this object, and we'll drag out a second sphere, like so. And if I like, I can go to parent mode, where I simply drag from the child to the parent, and I have immediately set up a parenting situation. So I'll go ahead and delete this child sphere, as it's no longer needed. Now, if we switch to the rotate tool, we have basically the same options that we had with the move tool. We have selection, drag, and XYZ. If we switch to the scale tool, things change a little bit. We have uniform, which allows us to scale the object uniformly if we drag anywhere outside the scene, or I'm sorry, outside the object. This is a lot like the drag mode for the move tool. We don't necessarily have to be on the manipulator, and we're automatically scaling the object in all three axes simultaneously. We also have XYZ, where left mouse allows us to scale in X, middle mouse allows us to scale in Y, and right mouse allows us to scale in Z. So I'll go ahead and undo those and put our object back to a normal scale. I'll go ahead and move back to selection. Underneath this, we have the ability to change our reference mode from global to local. So if I grab, say, the move tool, I'm using the hotkeys right now to change, and of course I'm in the Maya keyframe set, so I'm using the WER settings. So right now I'm moving in local mode. If I were to rotate my object, which is also in local, you'll notice the rotation axes are changing, and if I switch back to move, again in local, I can move along the local axes, or I can switch over to global and move in global axes instead. So lots of control there. Underneath this, I have my transformation tools. First off, beginning, of course, with translate, the most common one, just moving objects around. We have the rotate tool, which comes in two separate flavors. Standard rotate, where we can just, as you might imagine, rotate our object around to any orientation we like. We also have the rotate around feature. I'll go ahead and make another duplicate of this sphere for just a moment. And what the rotate around feature is going to do is allow you to rotate two objects while using one as a pivot. So I'll select a second, well, let me go ahead and switch over to rotate around, and now I'll select this sphere second. I held down Control and Shift to select this second sphere, and now if I rotate, I'm rotating almost as if this were a parenting scenario, although it isn't. If I were to come back and just select this object by itself, it rotates freely on its own. Just to show you the difference between the two, if I didn't have rotate around active and I selected both objects and rotated, they would both rotate around their respective pivots. So let's go ahead and delete that object, and I'll bring in a new sphere, like so, and let's scale it up. Down from here, I have the scale tool, which has a couple of settings of its own. First, it has scale uniform, which is going to allow me to scale the object from its center in a uniform manner. I can scale on all three axes. Of course, I can also choose an individual axis upon which to scale using the manipulator. I also have scale volumetric, in which I can select a single axis to scale upon, and I will keep the volume of my object. So as I squash in Z, my X and Y axes expand. So I'm actually maintaining volume in my object. Cool for squash and stretch functions. Down from here, I have the object mode that I can choose. So what objects am I selecting in my scene? The default of which is model mode, where you can select the models and objects throughout your scene. Down from here, you can select vertices in case maybe you're adjusting some skinning on a particular model. You need to adjust some skin weights. You'll need to make vertices selectable, so there's vertex mode. And if you're adding auxiliary pivots to an object, which is something that we do cover in one of the other videos in this Motionbuilder series, you can switch over to the pivot mode and select and manipulate manipulator pivots without affecting the rest of the character rig. So we'll go ahead and leave this in model mode. Underneath this, we have several different selection filters that we can use to control what we can and cannot select inside of our viewer window. Now, just to show you how this works, let me bring in a couple of other objects in our scene. For example, I'll bring in a null, and we'll scale that up nice and big so that it can be seen. So I'll make this a little bit bigger, and I'll move it up just a tad. And we'll bring in a light here on the opposite side. I'll move it forward so it's casting a little more light on our sphere. So something about like so. Now, let's just assume that this was a complex scene and I needed a little more control over what I can and cannot select in it. If I have all of these filters off, such as they are in the default position, then everything is selectable. If I draw a marquee selection box, notice I get everything. I get the null, I get my object, and I get my light. As soon as I switch on any one of these filters, then I can only select the object for the filter that I selected. For example, if I click nulls and I drag another box around every object, all I get is the null. Notice that my sphere and my light remain unselected. If I choose lights, then I will get the null and the light. So notice they're both selected here in the filters, but my sphere remains unselected. If I switch both those off, of course I can switch over to objects, and all I get is my sphere. So you can use these to fully customize what you can and cannot select inside of Motionbuilder. It's a really, really cool feature. Underneath this, at the very bottom of the viewer window, we have the ability to enter in specific X, Y, and Z transforms for an object. So right now I have the Move tool active, and we can already see the coordinates, the global coordinates, as listed here for our object. Currently at 144.54, I could set this maybe to 200, and we can see the object move. So if you need precise motion, you can just type in exactly the values you need very quickly and easily. So that is going to wrap up all of the features of this toolbar, save one thing I do want to mention before we go. If you go under the Settings Preferences area, we can bring down the Interface tab, and this toolbar can be relocated from the left side to the right side of your screen. So right now I had it set to right, I switched it over to left, I click OK, and it's going to say that you need to restart the application. That doesn't apply to us because we're using the Viewer Toolbar, so we click OK, and the toolbar jumps over to the left side of the screen. So you can really use whichever configuration you prefer. If you like it on the left, stick it over there. If you like it on the right, and so on. So that is going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.